Hello, BookTube. I have a bunch of new books to show you. It's a mail haul. There's a periodical and several titles, several of which were opened on my exclusive OnlyFans channel. I'm afraid you missed that. I left a box for you unpaying hoi polloi. And we also have the books themselves, worth talking about. We also have the new issue of The Nation, The Man Who Saw It Coming. This is a long article discussion with a virologist who predicted back in 2016 that the West, that the world in general, was uniquely vulnerable to a potent viral infection, and has been saying, I'm familiar with this guy. I haven't read this issue yet. I love The Nation, though, because it's a relatively cheap subscription for a huge amount of great writing. For instance, this issue has, I think, both book reviews. Our reviews of books that I didn't read and don't care about, but I'm still going to enjoy reading them. But I believe in this article, he bangs the same drum that he's been banging on all sorts of media for a long time, which is to say that COVID-19 is just a dry run for the viral infection that will really bring the world to its knees. That if you think this was bad, it takes just a tiny flex of the imagination to picture a virus that's 10 times as communicable as COVID-19 and 10 times as deadly. They do exist. It's not possible to do that. And he says that he has said, I don't know what he says in this article. It'll be the first thing I read in this issue. But he's been saying that no one is learning the right lessons, and that these things are coming. They are in the future, whether it's from the exotic meat market, which is growing as natural habitats are invaded one after another, or whether it comes from catastrophic climate change, which is going to free huge amounts of microorganisms into the atmosphere, into the world, that have been frozen, literally frozen. They don't die, they just freeze. They go into suspended animation like Captain America. If you have suddenly no polar ice caps on this planet, if this planet, for the first time in a long, long time, has no polar ice caps, then everything that's been frozen in those polar ice caps for millions of years will be loose in the environment. I imagine the article is going to be quite upsetting, but I'll tell you another thing that upsets me about this and every other issue of The Nation. I'll rant just a bit. I'm sure you've seen this ad. It's the ad on the back. Finally, a computer designed for you, not your grandchildren. Easy to read, easy to see, easy to use. Just plug it in. For pictures of your grandkids, for big tabs that tell you where the email is and how to answer it, for a huge gamer-type keyboard. All available to you in monthly installments. It comes with enhanced video chat, faster email, a larger 22-inch high-resolution screen, easier to see, 16% more viewing area, simple navigation so you never get lost, Intel processor, lightning fast, good as they could do in 1998. Computer is in the monitor, no bulky tower. Text-to-speech translation, it can even read your emails to you. And I don't know if it says anywhere on here, it's the WOW computer. And I don't know if it says anywhere on this full-page ad what it costs. I'm pretty sure that you get it in an installment plan, like $39.95 a month or something like that. And you know what bothers me about this? You might be thinking, you're a tech guy. It hardly takes any inclination for you to get a new piece of tech. The computer is all in the screen. No need to worry about a tower, because obviously this is an iPad with a dedicated keyboard. Or a tablet with a dedicated keyboard. And that's the technology itself is not what bothers me. I'm all for simplified technology. One of the reasons why I love tech so much is because Apple came along, and in the middle of my grappling with the modern democratization of tech, Apple came along and said, we should make this easy. This shouldn't be hackers only. We should make this easy. You should have a desktop with icons you can move. You should have a relatively simple menu of commands. And Apple did that, and a lot of computer-minded people don't like the fact that you can't mess around with the Apple ecosystem anywhere near as much as you can with Android or other open systems. But it's a godsend to people who don't know what they're doing. And so, of course, that's not the part that I mind. The part that I mind is the surrender that's going on here, the giving up the game. Not only on the part of the advertisers, they are slimy, they have to make a living however they have, but the part of the people that this is aimed at. It's built for you, not your grandchildren. Meaning what? Meaning what exactly? That we should just accept as a normal feature of growing old that you will grow stupid, that you will grow unadventurous, that you won't be able to make sense out of anything that's presented to you that wasn't true in 1959 when you were the champion marble shooter. It's extremely insulting. In a way, it's extremely insulting to aim this at senior citizens. Who, I guarantee you, most of the people who will see this full-page ad can't have been cheap to buy this on The Nation. I guarantee you, most of the people who will see this full-page ad and seriously consider it are my age or younger. And I would vicariously feel incredibly insulted that somebody would market, oh, here's a simple computer. I don't know what I'm doing. Oh, it's too complex. I might point out here something that, if in case I have any senior citizens who are watching this channel, I might point out something. I say it every once in a while in person. I don't say it quite so often on this channel. Instead, I say the obverse on this channel. I say the obvious inference on this channel. I have mentioned many times over the times that we've been talking to each other that I infinitely prefer making friends with very young people. There's a really good reason for that. It's a reason that me sainted Ma used to repeat over and over again, especially when we were walking back from the thrift shop and she got a little tired in her 7th or 8th decade. We'd be walking back, she'd get a little tired, and she would say to me, I don't understand. I am 22 years old. Now, she wasn't delusional. She knew that she wasn't 22 years old. What she meant was she, the person, had not changed from then. Still up for anything, still interested, still talky, still capable of learning, still all of that. It's the body that grew old, but the person stayed flexible. A 22-year-old with a lifetime of experience. I realize that's not the easiest kind of line to walk. It can be tricky to do. But it should be your goal, especially since the alternatives are infinitely worse. So the obverse of that, the inference from the fact that I have mostly very young friends, is pretty simple. Allow me to state it here before we move on to the books. And that is, if your mind, if the you that me sainted Ma was talking about, the you who's 22 years old, if that you gets old and stiff, then you are surrendering any worth that you have to the world. Okay? Nobody cares how old you are physically. Nobody cares about your varicose veins or your goiters or your bumps and bruises, except for the aches and pains section of Manatee Monday. Nobody's listening. Everybody has their own problems. Nobody cares about how much wear and tear there is on your chassis. But if you allow your brain to get old, if you allow your brain to get stiff and codify, then what use are you to anybody? And that is the point that I've been making to you in these conversations for years now. When I volunteered on my own, also plenty of you have asked, why is it that so many of your friends are so much younger than you are? Well, that's the reason. Because it's almost impossible to find. This bugs me. This really bugs me. I have an entire cabinet full of tech. Now, some of it may daunt me, and some of it's deeper abstruse mysteries or whatnot, but I don't ever need anything like this, and neither does anyone who buys this thing. You want a cheap computer, that's fine. You want an easy computer, crawl into the grave and pull the dirt in over you. Okay? Anyway. Ooh, that started off hot, didn't it? We'll move on to books, and maybe we'll calm down. Oh, well, probably not on this first one, because this first one is about 21st century feminism. And there's no subject that is much more likely to rev up my engines and also to get me ranting, but maybe this will be an exception to the case. You never know. This is a brand new book. I opened it on my OnlyFans, but they're willing to pay their freight. They're not like you freeloaders. This comes out in 2 weeks, on September the 21st, and this is called The Right to Sex, Feminism in the 21st Century, by Amia Srinivasan. The author's exemplary debut, so this is her debut. It's subtitled Feminism in the 21st Century, and it demonstrates her place at the fore of contemporary feminist and political thought. At 35, the author became not only the youngest person, but also the first woman and the first person of color appointed to one of Britain's most prestigious academic positions, the Chichely Professor of Social and Political Theory at Oxford. In this respect, Srinivasan was already a historic figure, and we at FSG believe she's poised to become a defining voice of our era. I would love to know the circumstances of her appointment to that prestigious chair. I would love to know that. I'm proud for her. I'm very happy for her. That's great, but I'd love to know the circumstances that we never will know. I would love to know the circumstances of why she was appointed to that chair. Like, for instance, was there any coercion involved? Were any of the people who voted to appoint her to that chair, afraid of what would happen if they didn't? Let's hope not. I certainly hope not. This book does no less than bring feminism into the present, examining how political and intellectual history bear on women in this moment and defining the questions which we must grapple with to understand sex in our peak internet, late capitalist, post-#MeToo society. The book collects daring and rigorous essays on rape and consent, the power of internet porn, incel culture. I wonder if that's where the title comes from. Could very well be. Incels are very vocal about their right to sex. Student-teacher relationships, prostitution, and the carceral system. The pieces will speak to readers across generations and to new as well as committed feminists, academics, and activists. Well, that would be great. I have to confess, I don't read much contemporary 21st century feminism that doesn't do anything than boil my blood. I don't read any of it that's usually readable, and most of the ideas, oh my, they just boil down to what the alt-right section of YouTube refers to as misandry. Just a knee-jerk blanket hatred of men. Most of what I read along those lines, under the rubric of 21st century feminism, basically boils down to that. That in order to get on board with anything you're thinking or talking about in terms of the rights of women, I pretty much have to agree that all men are rapists. And if I don't agree with that, as no man in his effing mind should, if you don't agree with that, then obviously, if you don't agree with the premise of a piece of work, it's going to be hard to get on board with any of the rest of it. So let's hope. I'm really hoping now that this thing is different. Dedicating her first book to sex, Srinivasan demonstrates how deeply political this intimate realm truly is. A provocation and a promise. The right to sex transforms many of our most urgent political debates about class, gender, race, and justice, and asks us to imagine what it might mean to be free. What an interesting question. To be free. She traces the meaning of sex in our world, animated by the hope for a different world. She reaches back into an older feminist tradition that was unafraid to think of sex as a political phenomenon. Okay, well, I'm interested. Definitely, that is fascinating, and to the limited extent, maybe that the author had any hand in writing the pub sheet or the jacket copy or approving it. That bespeaks some deep thinking. So. Let's hope. Now I'm hopeful. That would be great. It would be great to have a book to recommend. What are the titles of the chapters? The Conspiracy Against Men is chapter number 1. Talking to My Students About Porn. The Right to Sex. On Not Sleeping with Your Students. Okay, all right. This could be very good. All right, so that's our first one. That comes out in a couple of weeks. Then the next one that I opened on my sexy OnlyFans channel. I'd open them all on this channel if you people would cough up for a Patreon, but do you? No. If every one of you signed on to Patreon for $1 a month, I could quit working in the box factory. I could make multiple videos a day. But wait, never mind. Forget I said that. The next one is a novel. It's called The Guide by Pete Heller. A river scene, woods, but also ominous burning red in the middle there. So what have we got here? Kingfisher Lodge, nestled in a canyon on 1.5 miles of the most pristine river water on the planet, is known by locals as Billionaire's Mile and is locked behind a heavy gate. Sandwiched between barbed wire and a meadow with signs that read, "Don't get shot," the resort boasts boutique fishing at its finest. Safe from the viruses that have plagued America for years, Kingfisher offers a respite for wealthy clients. Now it also promises a second chance for Jack, a return to normalcy after a young life filled with loss. When he is assigned to guide a well-known singer, his only job is to rig her line, carry her gear, and steer her to the best trout he can find. But then a human scream pierces the night, and Jack soon realizes that this idyllic fish lodge may be merely a cover for a far more sinister operation. A novel as gripping as it is lyrical, as frightening as it is moving, The Guide is another masterpiece from Peter Heller. So Peter Heller has given us many masterpieces. What has he written? The River, The Painter, Dog Stars. Okay. All right. He holds an MFA from the Iowa Writers Workshop. Pfft, who doesn't? In poetry and fiction, and lives in Denver, Colorado. Okay, well, I don't have a sheet for this thing, but I bet it's a September release. So let's move on here. What's this next one? Okay, this next one comes out in late March of 2022. So this is the latest book I have on the pile of books for of forthcoming books. This is by Andrew DeYoung, and it's called The Temps. An ominous cover there. They're underemployed, underpaid, and trying to survive the end of the world while trapped inside an office complex. Who knew temp work could be this dangerous? Jacob Elliott doesn't want a temporary job in the mailroom of Delphi Enterprises, but after 2 post-college years of unpaid internships and living in his parents' basement, he needs the work. Then, on his first day, the unthinkable happens. Toxic gas descends on a meeting in Delphi's outdoor amphitheater, killing all the regular employees and leaving Jacob stranded inside the vast office complex. Wandering through Delphi's headquarters, Jacob finds other survivors. Lauren, the disillusioned classics major who's now writing online personality quizzes. Swati, the fitness instructor trying to escape a toxic relationship. That's toxic twice. Once for gas, once for relationship. It's not intentional, so it's just lazy. And Dominic, the business school student who will do almost anything to get ahead. Stranded in the wreckage of the company that employed them, the Temps band together to create a miniature world that's part spring break, part office culture, until a shocking discovery disrupts the survivors' self-made paradise and drives them to uncover the truth about the mysterious corporation that employed them and the apocalypse that brought their world to an end. Okay, that is kind of intriguing. Kind of wondering how these Temps find water and food in the office complex. Is the office complex sealed from the outside world? And if it is, okay, it must have kitchens, larders, maybe a supply of water. I'd be interested to know. The practical details of that are probably the last thing on the author's mind. Do we know anything about the author? He's an author and editor living in St. Paul with his wife and 2 children. And his debut novel, The Exo Project, was the winner of a Minnesota Book Award. Didn't know Minnesota had book awards. Did any of you read The Exo Project? This sounds fascinating. The Office meets the apocalypse. What's up, pup? What you doing, baby? Oh, really? Ma? Scusco. What you doing? We're both a little disoriented because we went for a long walk today. It is absolutely beautiful here in Boston. A daytime high of 69 degrees Fahrenheit. That is a full 40 degrees Fahrenheit cooler than it was this time last week. This time last week, it was a danger to me and Frida for us to be outside for more than 10 consecutive minutes. And today, it's just incredibly beautiful. Blue sky, low humidity, light breezes, everything bright, bright green from the drenching and rain that we had. Oh, it's Frida's yoga. The day wouldn't be complete without Frida's yoga. Do you want to get down, baby? There you go. So we're a little disoriented because we went on a longer walk, and there was a point on the walk where we both just automatically thought, all right, well, we've got to head back now. Then we realized, it feels just fine. This is beautiful. Well, let's keep going. Anyway, let's keep on with the mail here. We've got the next one is what is this coming out? October 5th. This is from the great folks at Temps and Hudson, and this is it's edited by Alex Johnson, and it's called Art Day by Day. A unique almanac that presents a selection of art historical events from every day of the year from the momentous and headline-grabbing to the intimate and amusing. Taking a novel approach to the history of art, Art Day by Day aims to change the pace at which the story is told. This unique volume shares snapshots of the most exciting, unusual, and noteworthy art events from around the world and throughout history, presented day by day. Drawing on articles, diaries, interviews, letters, speeches, transcripts, and more, Art Day by Day includes stories of famous paintings, ancient sculptures, comic strips, photographs, murals, manifestos, and marriages, from the terracotta soldiers to the self-shredding Banksy. Each day has its own section, starting with an extended quote through which artists, critics, and commentators speak directly to the reader. Okay, so that's what this is going to be. See, it's June 4th, June 3rd. It's gonna be that way. It comes out in early October, October 5th. Things like this can be a little bit difficult to review in any productive way. They're easy to review. Don't get me wrong about that. Nothing is easier to review than something like this, but not in a productive way. In just you regurgitating the book, which is, if you do that as a critic, you're just an unpaid arm of the publishers of Temps and Hudson's publicity department. Who wants to be that? But how do you assess critically something like this? I guess you could assess it by what it leaves out, major things that it doesn't do. That's going to require you to know a lot about art history before you can go in guns blazing. But I'm up for it, absolutely. The book that I have that I use along these lines is Faden's The Art Book. The publisher Faden has a book. It came out in a little white paperback, but also as a large hardcover. And the art book's amazing because it breaks down its artists alphabetically, just purely alphabetically. So as you're turning the pages, you're bouncing on and around the whole art world and finding correspondences that you never imagined, because you never would have put those two artists together except by their last name. But I'm perfectly happy to switch to this. Does this have any artwork in it? Oh no, it doesn't. Wow. An art book with no art in it. This has no art in it at all. Maybe that would have made it expensive. This comes out in early October, so if you have art fans on your list, or if you are one yourself, it's a fairly no-brainer. And then finally we have the box, which is the package that we will open on this channel. It's a fairly good-sized box, but it is light as a feather. So once again, I have a feeling that probably what happened here is that somebody in an office somewhere had to mail out a book, and for which I'm eternally grateful, and they just thought, this box is the nearest thing to hand, and sent it that way. The box is absolutely refusing to open, and that usually means, in my dyspeptic experience, that usually means that the book inside is not worth getting at. The books are the opposite of pearls in that regard. Usually, if somebody has made you fight to get at the book, and boy, oh boy, has somebody done that here, usually the book is not worth it. But we'll see. Maybe this is the exception. I have a pile of garbage now. Oh, great. Oh, all right. This is the exception. Okay, great. Fantastic. This is the exception. I don't have a date for this. I don't have a sheet for it. But because the piece of paper that was in here was the invoice. I don't have a sell sheet for it. But I have a feeling it's September. This is by Charles Gallagher. A very disturbing reading, but necessary. This is Nazis of Copley Square, the forgotten history of the Christian front. And the location that's referred to in the title is one of the beating heartbeats of Boston, my town, my city. Copley Square is an amazing place. It is an amazing square mile. For the sheer amount of history packed into it, it is an amazing square mile. I knew a historian once who was working on a book that he was going to call The Gods of Copley Square. And it wasn't hyperbole. All of the national firsts, all of the incredible groundbreaking things that happened in Copley Square. Copley Square is where Trinity Church is. It's also where the Copley Plaza is. It's where the big glass Hancock Tower is that has become a visual staple of Boston. And it's also where the public library is. The Boston Public Library is in Copley Square. And this is about a very different kind of crowd packing Copley Square. So let me tell you about this. On January 13th, 1940, FBI agents burst into the homes and offices of 17 members of the Christian Front, seizing guns, ammunition, and homemade bombs. J. Edgar Hoover's charges were incendiary. The group, he alleged, was planning to incite a revolution and install a temporary dictatorship in order to stamp out Jewish and communist influence in the United States. Interviewed in his jail cell, the Front's ringleader was unbowed. This is his quote. All I can say is, long live Christ the King, down with communism. In Nazis of Copley Square, Charles Gallagher provides a crucial missing chapter in the history of the American far right. The men of the Christian Front imagined themselves as crusaders fighting for the spiritual purification of the nation, under assault from godless communism, and they were hardly alone in their beliefs. The Front traced its origin to vibrant global Catholic theology movements of the early 20th century, such as the mystical body of Christ and Catholic Action. The Front's anti-Semitism was inspired by Sunday sermons and by lay leaders openly espousing fascist and Nazi beliefs. Gallagher chronicles the evolution of the Front, the transatlantic cloak and dagger intelligence operations that subverted it, and the mainstream political and religious leaders who shielded the Front's activities from scrutiny. If that sounds familiar to any of you who are listening to me, I'm sure that's part of what got this book going. So Charles Gallagher, what an author photo. Do you want to read that guy's book? I do. I do. He's an associate professor of history at Boston College. His book, Vatican's Secret Diplomacy, won the John Gilmary Shea Prize for the American Catholic Historical Association. Okay, this is going to be hard to read, definitely. I think this is probably a September release, but boy, oh boy, I always say that my mail hauls determine my TBRs. Of course, that makes sense, because although I do a lot of shopping at Thrift Shores and my beloved Brattle Bookshop, most of my reading is new releases. And this goes right to the top of the list. Art Day by Day goes right to the top of the list. The Temps, I'm very tempted. But the other thing that goes right to the top of the list is The Right to Sex. And I can do all three of these tonight, especially since Art Day by Day is not the type of thing that you're expecting to read from cover to cover. So anyway, those are the books for this mail haul. We have The Nazis of Copley Square. Good Lord, this is going to hit home. Then we have The Right to Sex. This is Amia Srinivasan's debut about modern feminism. What it means, what it's asking, what it's trying to tell you. Utterly fascinating. Cannot wait. Then Art Day by Day, where you just put a bookmark in there and move it day by day for an art reflection. And there's no artwork in the thing, but maybe that's a bit of postmodern economizing. I mean, the editor has to know that on your phone, everybody has a phone right in their pocket that can call up any piece of artwork that's mentioned in here in less than 5 seconds. So maybe you don't bother putting the artwork in day by day. Then we've got The Temps by Andrew DeYoung. The bosses are eliminated by toxic gas, and a few of the temps are trapped in the office complex. What do they do? I want to know how they live, but it sounds like the book is going to concentrate on what kind of a society they create. And finally, The Guide by Peter Heller, another masterpiece from Peter Heller about the ultimate gated community that may be hiding the ultimate sin, the ultimate evil from one rough-hewn outsider. That plus The Nation, which is going to be literally the first thing I read as soon as I'm done with this video, because I want to read the headline story, The Mayor Who Saw It Coming. I want to read about, even if it chills my blood, I want to read about potential future pandemics. I don't know why I do, but I do. So I'm going to wrap this up, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.